Welcome back to True Ghost Vault. Tonight we return to the haunted heart of the Appalachian wilderness, where the fog remembers the echoes speak, and sometimes the thing knocking on your door wears your face. These are three chilling stories from deep within the mountains, tales of vanishing mothers, doppelgängers in the mirror, and voices calling your name from places no one should be. Don't speak, don't answer, and whatever you do, don't trust your own reflection. The man I keep seeing in my nightmares is walking through the mountains behind my cabin. It started with the dreams, not just bad dreams, not just strange. I mean the kind of dreams that leave claw marks on your mind. The kind that follow you into the shower, into the morning coffee, into every silent moment of the day, like a low hum of static behind your thoughts. He was always there. At first, just a shape, a tall silhouette standing in the dark behind a curtain of pine trees. No face, no sound, just stillness, watching. But every night he got closer. One night he stepped from the trees and stood at the edge of a clearing. I didn't recognize a ring of ash and bone under a gray sky. Another night I found myself sitting across from him in a room with no walls, breathing the same cold breath, feeling his eyes on me though he had no eyes at all. And then came the night I woke up screaming, because he spoke, not in words, in my voice. It echoed hollow and cracked like a recording played backwards underwater. But I knew it was mine, and he whispered just 3 words: "You remember me." I moved to the cabin 2 months ago, tucked deep in the Blue Ridge stretch of the Appalachians. The place was meant to be a reset. My therapist called it environmental withdrawal, cutting myself off from noise people's stimulus. The idea was to rebuild myself somewhere quiet, somewhere clean. The cabin sits near the base of the ridge where the fog rolls in like a tide each morning, swallowing the peaks and dripping dew down the window panes. It was beautiful, sure, but not comforting, not anymore. 'Cause 2 weeks ago I saw him, not in my dreams, not behind my eyes, outside, in the woods behind the cabin. Real. It was early morning, mid-October, that kind of damp, brittle silence where even the birds haven't decided if it's worth singing yet. I was at the window, holding a mug I'd forgotten to drink from, staring into the pines behind the cabin, and then I saw him, halfway up the slope, still, backlit by the thin gray of dawn. He didn't move, not even when the wind pushed through the trees, not even when I leaned against the glass for a closer look. He just stood there, same height, same build, calm posture from the dreams. I blinked. He was gone. The trees were there undisturbed, but something was off. It took me a moment to notice what it was. The birds weren't singing. The forest, normally alive with sound, was quiet. And the silence. I was listening. I told myself it was stressful, sleep deprivation. A trauma echo kicking up the dust of some long repressed shadow. That's what the mind does out here, right? Out in the quiet, it fills the blank with ghosts. But that night, I dreamed again. Only this time he wasn't in the dream. I was alone in a clearing, dead leaves curling at my feet, a ring of stones around me, the sky pulsing gray overhead. I walked in circles calling out for him, and when I woke, there were muddy footprints on my porch. Large, bare, leading to the front door and then back into the woods. I didn't sleep after that. I stayed up with the lights on. I set up motion sensors I bought online. I even left the door unlocked one night just to see if he'd come in. But nothing happened. For 3 nights, the woods stayed quiet. No dreams, no footprints, no signs. And then I got the knock. 3 slow knocks at exactly 3:17 a.m. Not frantic, not loud, patient. I didn't answer. I couldn't move. I sat in the living room, heart frozen, every shadow in the cabin leaning toward the door like they were listening too. The knocks came again. 3, then silence. Then I heard my voice outside, calling just one word. Please didn't open the door. Not that night. Not even as my own voice begged from the other side, broken, hollow, almost childlike. Please, I'm cold. I sat there in the dark, trembling, every light off, breath shallow. I don't know why I turned the lights off. Some stupid instinct, like if the cabin couldn't be seen, maybe it couldn't be entered. But that was naive, because the knocking had stopped, and now it was coming from the back door. 3 knocks, same rhythm, same patience. That's when the sound started, a scratching soft at first. Fingernails or twigs along the side of the cabin. It moved slowly, dragging across the wallboards as if circling the perimeter. And then, the voice again. Why did you forget me? It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be, because it was mine, perfectly mine. Not just the tone, the breath, the cadence, the hesitation between syllables. Like it had recorded me for years and learned how I fall apart in the dark. I don't know how long I sat there. The scratching stopped sometime before dawn. I checked every camera, every motion sensor. Nothing, just static. I left the cabin the next morning, got in the truck, drove 5 hours into town, booked a room at a cheap motel, and stared at the ceiling for hours. I told myself I'd sleep, I'd reset, I'd get some help. But that night, I dreamed again. Not of him, of the cabin. I was inside, standing in the hallway, door open to the back porch. Something wet was dripping on the floor. I followed the sound through the kitchen to the fridge. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was me, curled in the fetal position, pale, shaking, whispering something over and over. I leaned in to hear. It was the same phrase on repeat. He's wearing my skin. I woke up gasping. My fingernails were packed with dirt. My feet were muddy. There were pine needles in my sheets. And the motel room door was unlocked. I should have left then. Should have packed up, checked out, and driven until the mountains were nothing but a memory I could smother in pavement and distance. But something was wrong. Something inside me had shifted. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was familiarity. Like I wasn't running from something, I was being called back. So I returned. The road to the cabin was buried in fog, the kind that doesn't roll, it hangs. Low, thick, unmoving. Like it's waiting. The trees looked taller than I remembered. The shadows between them darker, denser. I killed the engine and sat there for a long time, staring at the porch. There was something hanging from the rafters. At first I thought it was rope, or maybe wind chimes. But when I stepped closer, my stomach turned to ice. It was clothing, mine. The same shirt I'd worn the night I first saw him. Stiff with dew sleeves torn, hung like a carcass. Beneath it, a pair of muddy boots. My boots, arranged neatly like an offering. There were no footprints around them, just that same pressed silence. The air didn't move. Inside the cabin, everything looked normal until I passed the hallway mirror. I paused, looked at myself, and I swear to God my reflection was late, just by half a second. But it was enough. I raised my hand. My reflection followed a beat behind. It smiled before I did. I smashed the glass with my fist. Blood dripped to the floor. But the crack down the mirror's surface, it didn't line up with my swing. It was already there. That night, I bolted the doors, turned on every light, lit the fireplace, sat in the center of the living room with every weapon I had, a hunting knife, bear spray, a loaded .38 my father gave me when I turned 20. Then silence for hours, until I heard the sound again. Not outside, not on the porch, under the floorboards, a dragging sound, and then the voice directly beneath my feet. Let me back in. I didn't move. I couldn't. The voice drifted up through the floor like smoke through a crack in the world. Muffled, familiar, so perfectly tuned to me that it bypassed logic and went straight to my bones. Let me back in. The wood beneath my feet was old. I'd always known that, but now I could hear it breathing. Boards expanding, contracting, shifting ever so slightly with each syllable that rose from whatever was below. I pressed my ear to the floor. Nothing. Then thud. Something hit the underside of the boards. Hard. Directly beneath me. Thud. Again. Then a slow, dragging sound, like someone crawling on their stomach through dirt. Fingernails scraping wood. I staggered back and aimed the revolver at the floor. My hands were shaking too badly to aim, but it didn't matter. There was nothing to shoot. Just the sound of something pacing below me, crawling in slow circles. And still the voice continued. You left me here. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the flashlight, and opened the hatch to the crawl space beneath the cabin. I stared into the darkness for a long time, heart pounding, in my ears, breath tight and hollow. The beam of the flashlight cut a narrow tunnel through the dust and cobwebs. Nothing moved, and then something breathed back at me. Not loud, not aggressive, just close, too close. The crawl space was empty except for one thing, a Polaroid lying perfectly flat in the dirt as if waiting. I picked it up. It was a photo of me, asleep in bed, taken from the foot of the mattress. The timestamp in the corner read 3:17 a.m., the exact time the knocking started. I dropped the photo and scrambled out, slammed the hatch shut, and dragged a bookshelf over it. That was 2 nights ago. Now I hear it every night. The dragging, the breathing, my voice learning new words, more accurate every time. Last night it said something different, softer, closer. I'm almost finished. This morning I found muddy footprints in the hallway, leading from my bedroom to the mirror. I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room until the sun came up, watching the hallway like it might start breathing on its own. Every board, every shadow, every creak had a pulse. I could feel it now, the shift. Like the cabin itself was tilting inward, folding into something older, something watching from behind the walls. When daylight finally came, it didn't bring comfort. It brought clarity. Because I noticed something I hadn't seen before. There were 2 mugs in the sink, both used, both with lipstick smudges. I live alone. I don't own anything with lipstick. I checked the photos on my phone. The last 10 I didn't take. Blurry shots, dark corners of the cabin doorways, the edge of my bed while I slept. In one, I'm brushing my teeth. My eyes are bloodshot. My mouth is slightly open like I'm talking, but I don't remember saying anything. And in the mirror behind me, there's another version of me, just standing, watching, smiling. By noon, I knew I had 2 choices: burn the place down and run or face it. I chose the crawl space. Again. I waited until dusk, until the woods began to fill with fog, until the world hushed and the birds fell silent again. I moved the bookshelf, pulled the hatch open, and this time I crawled inside. The dirt was cold, wet, breathing. I crawled deeper than I should have, farther than the cabin's foundation. It didn't make sense. The space kept going. Walls narrowed, the ceiling dropped, and then I found him, crouched, facing away from me, wearing my clothes. Same boots, same hair, same twitch in the right hand. He was mimicking my breath, perfectly timed. I whispered, "Who are you?" He turned around. It was like looking into a mirror, held just slightly wrong. My face but off, jaw unhinged, too far, eyes glassy and liquid. Skin, not skin, like something trying to remember what skin is supposed to look like. He spoke in my voice. "I was born in your breath." Then he lunged. I don't remember how I got out. I woke up in bed this morning, fully dressed, mouth full of dirt, arms scratched, blood under my fingernails, not mine. And there was something new on the wall above the mirror, a perfect outline of my hand, burned into the wood. It's almost midnight now. The air is still, thicker than before. Even the wind doesn't move. The mirror in the hallway is covered, not by me. I woke up and found a sheet draped over it, nailed into the wood. The nails are old, rusted, as if they've been there for years. But I only moved into this cabin 2 months ago. Every light in the cabin flickers, not all at once, one at a time, like a countdown. I can hear him, not crawling anymore, walking, with confidence. Each footstep creaks through the walls, not under the house, inside it. He's not mimicking me anymore. He's rehearsed perfectly. He doesn't need to learn how to move like me. He knows, because he is me now. He spoke again an hour ago this time, from right outside the door. Only 4 words, "You're in the wrong body." And I believed him, because when I looked in the bathroom mirror, I didn't recognize the face. It was still mine, but drained, eyes hollow, mouth slightly open like it had been waiting too long for something to speak through it. And behind me, in the mirror's reflection, something moved. Not fast, not dramatic, just stepped into place. A man, my height, my build, my face. And he didn't smile, because he didn't need to. I understood. The dreams were never dreams. They were instructions. This wasn't an invasion. It was a handoff. And it's time. Time to trade places. Time to go home. I'm walking into the woods now. I'm barefoot. I'm not cold. The fog parts for me. And behind me in the cabin, he watches from the window. He wears my face now. And no one will ever know. What my mother told me before she vanished into the mountain fog. I remember her voice more clearly than her face. There's something about fog that eats away at the edges of memory. It smooths out the details like wind over stone. But voices linger, especially hers, especially what she said to me that morning before the mist rolled in and she stepped into it, barefoot, humming with tears in her eyes. She said, "When it comes for you, don't speak. If you speak, it becomes you." I didn't understand what she meant. I didn't understand a lot of things about my mother. She was always more rooted in the old ways than anyone else in our Appalachian town. My friends called her strange. The neighbors said she heard things in the wind, that she walked the holler at night with salt in her pockets and bones around her neck. But she raised me alone in a cabin carved into the mountain's shadow, and I loved her with the kind of loyalty only silence teaches. She never lied to me, not once. So when she looked into my eyes that morning, something inside me listened, even if my brain couldn't make sense of it. "Promise me," she whispered. "If you hear it, you don't speak. Not a word, not a whisper." I promised, but I lied. It was just after 5 a.m. when she left. The fog had already started rising, not drifting in like it usually did, but rising from the ground itself, curling out from between the trees, milky and dense, like breath held too long. I stood on the porch barefoot, watching her walk barefoot across the frostbitten soil, her white nightdress nearly vanishing into the mist. She didn't look back, didn't say goodbye, just vanished, like the mountain swallowed her. I waited 3 hours before I called anyone. And even then, I didn't call the police. I called my Uncle Charlie, my mother's older brother. He still lived on the other side of the ridge, in a rotting farmhouse nobody ever visited. When I told him what happened, he went quiet for a long time. Then he said something that chilled me more than the fog ever could. "It's her turn. The mountain remembers. Her turn." I drove to his house. He was waiting on the porch with a tin of chewing tobacco in one hand and a shotgun across his knees. His eyes were already red, like he'd been crying or drinking, or both. He didn't invite me in, just nodded to the woods behind his house. She knew it was coming, he said. Same way our father did. Same way his mother did. You can't outrun it. You just hope it don't speak your name. That's when I asked him what it was. He looked at me with eyes that had stopped hoping a long time ago. The fog's not weather, he said. It's memory, it's hunger, and sometimes it wants you to come home. I told him that sounded like bullshit. He told me I'd understand soon enough. And then he handed me a box. Small, cedar, locked with twine and an iron nail. She left this for you. I didn't open it until I got home. Inside were 3 things. A single Polaroid of my mother younger standing in the exact same fog, her eyes blacked out with ash. A piece of red thread frayed at both ends, soaked in something that smelled like iron. A folded scrap of paper, yellowed with age, handwritten in her looping script. If you hear your voice before you speak, run. If you see your face before you move, pray. But if it calls you by the name only I use, don't run, don't scream, just close your eyes. That night I dreamed of her standing in the trees again. Only this time, she wasn't alone. In the dream, she stood just beyond the tree line, fog, spiraling around her like threads of silk in water. But it wasn't the way she moved that made my stomach twist. It was how still she wasn't. Something stood behind her. No, through her. Like her outline was a film stretched too thin over another shape. A taller shadow hunched and jointless, wearing her like clothes it didn't understand. Its fingers long, boneless, curled through her hands. Its head bowed just behind hers, breathing the same air, whispering something I couldn't hear but could feel in my bones. And then she opened her mouth, not to speak, to let it out. I woke choking. My sheets were damp. The cabin was dark, power out. I fumbled for my flashlight and saw it immediately. The red thread from the box stretched from my doorknob across the floor, taut as a tripwire. And next to it, muddy footprints. Not boot prints. Bare feet. Small. Her size. They led from the front door to the edge of my bed, then vanished beneath it. But I didn't check under the bed. I couldn't, because I saw the mirror. A mirror I hadn't seen in years, the one from her old room, the one we buried after she said it watched back. Now it leaned against the far wall, fogged over with condensation and something else. Something that looked like breath, and scrawled across it in handwriting that wasn't hers, but tried to be, were the words, "Why didn't you close your eyes?" I ran to the porch. The fog was waiting, but not like before. It pressed against the tree line like a living wall, thicker than smoke, heavier than air. It curled around the edge of the porch, never quite crossing, just waiting, listening. Then came the sound. From the trees, my mother's voice, clear, soft, darling. But there was something wrong. She never called me that. Not once in her life. Only in the dream. That's when I realized it had been practicing. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat on the floor with the shotgun across my lap, staring at the door, listening, because it wasn't just my mother's voice anymore. Around 3 a.m., I heard my own voice whispering from the trees. Not screaming, not panicked, just whispering. Over and over, "Let me in. I'm you. It's cold out here." I pressed my hands over my ears and rocked back and forth like a child waiting for dawn. But dawn didn't come, not the way it should have. The light outside never brightened, the sky never changed. The fog stayed thick, too thick, like the sun itself was caught in it. The shadows of trees outside the cabin had gone still, not swaying, not creaking, just holding their breath. That's when I realized I couldn't hear the wind, or birds, or anything at all, not even the sound of my own breathing. I looked down at the mirror again. It was clearer now, no longer fogged, but I wasn't in it. Instead, it showed my mother younger, wild-eyed, barefoot, and weeping. She held the red thread in one hand, and in the other, she held a knife. And just behind her, rising from the fog, emerging inch by inch, like something resurrecting from the mountain's spine, was a shape I knew but couldn't name. Tall, human, but not. Its head tilted just like hers had in the dream, and in the mirror she spoke. Not to me, to it. Take my name. Let him keep the rest. The mirror shattered, not from touch, from inside. Glass sprayed the floor like teeth, and in its place, where the mirror had been, was now a square of thick, curling mist, moving like it was breathing. I didn't go near it. I couldn't, because the footprints had returned, trailing through the broken glass, leading across the floor, and stopping directly in front of me. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The fog had found its way inside, not in a rush, not as a flood. It crept patient, deliberate, like it knew it had all the time in the world. I watched it curl around the walls, the table legs, the door frame. Watched it pool at the corners of the room, as if the cabin itself had started to rot inward. The temperature dropped so suddenly, my breath fogged the air. Only my breath wasn't alone. Another cloud formed beside mine, softer, shallower, and perfectly synchronized. I turned my head slowly and saw myself kneeling across from me. Same flannel shirt, same scraped knuckles, same scar above the eyebrow. But the eyes were wrong. Empty, not black, not monstrous, just void, like windows looking into something that had never truly been alive. It didn't speak. It didn't need to, because it was breathing in when I was breathing out, like we were trading something. It reached forward and opened its hand. Inside was the red thread, wet, frayed, and wrapped around a small silver locket I hadn't seen in years, my mother's. Inside it was a photo of me as a child, smiling at someone just outside the frame, someone I couldn't remember, someone I never should. Then it spoke, not in my mother's voice, not in mine, but in the voice that watches people forget. She gave herself so you'd forget me, but you remembered. The fog surged, then swallowed the room. Everything disappeared, the walls, the floor, the air itself. And then silence. I woke at the base of the ridge the next morning, the locket still in my hand. The cabin was gone, not burned, not collapsed, gone. The woods had swallowed it like it had never been there. But in the stillness, I heard her voice one last time, barely a whisper in the trees. Close your eyes, baby, and don't speak. So I don't. I haven't said a word since, because the fog is still watching. And the moment I open my mouth, it'll remember what name to take next. I stayed in the fire tower overnight. Something knocked from below. I told myself it was just one night. That was the deal. Just 12 hours off-grid in the middle of 1,000,000 acres of frozen Appalachian wilderness. I'd man the old fire tower as a favor to a friend who couldn't make his shift. No big deal. At least that's what I believed when I climbed the rust-bitten ladder and bolted the hatch shut behind me. It was cold up there. Too cold for November. The kind of cold that gets in your bones and makes your thoughts feel heavy. You could see for miles from the top bare mountains, rolling out like sleeping giants, the skeletal outlines of trees, clutching at gray sky. No people, no roads, just woods and wind and quiet that felt too loud. The tower was a holdover from another time, metal-framed, unbleached, forgotten. Inside was a narrow cot, a cracked radio that hadn't worked in years, and a notebook filled with observations from previous rangers. The last entry was from 8 years ago. Just 3 words. It came back. At the time, I thought it was a joke. Now I'm not so sure. The light began to fade fast the way it does in the mountains when the sun decides it's had enough of the world. 1 minute it's dusk, the next it's pitch black. And out here with no town lights, no roads, no anything. Night isn't just dark, it's obliteration. I wrapped myself in a thermal blanket and tried to settle in. No cell signal, no GPS, just me, a wind-up lantern and an old thermos of instant coffee that tasted like battery acid and regret. I watched the treetops sway below. The wind up here had a sound, not just whistling or rustling, but something deeper, like a pressure behind the ears, a constant low hum. At first, I thought it was just altitude sickness, but it wasn't. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard it. Not from above, not from outside, from below. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks on the steel underside of the tower. Not metal creaking, not the structure shifting. Knocks, human, intentional. I froze, didn't move, didn't breathe, just sat there on the cot flashlight aimed at the trapdoor hatch beneath my feet. It was bolted shut from the inside. There shouldn't have been anyone out there. Nobody climbs a fire tower in the middle of the night in below-zero wind chill in a forest with no trails. Nobody. The knocks came again. Knock, knock, knock. Slower this time. More curious. Then silence. I waited 10 minutes, 15. Nothing. I crept over to the hatch, laid flat, pressed my ear against the cold metal. Nothing. Then a breath, right on the other side, and then a voice. Low, familiar. It said my name, not shouted, whispered, Evan. But here's the thing. It was my mother's voice, and she's been dead for 6 years. I stumbled backward so fast I cracked my shoulder on the metal frame behind me. The flashlight spun across the floor and rolled into the corner, its beam jerking wildly like it was trying to warn me instead of light the way. I stood there, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth, eyes locked on the trapdoor. Listening, waiting, praying I'd imagined it, but I hadn't. I know my mother's voice. I know the soft, careful way she said my name, like it meant something fragile. I hadn't heard it since we buried her 6 years ago in clay that wouldn't dry. And yet, the breath had fogged the underside of the hatch. Not mine, something else. I didn't sleep after that. I sat with my back to the far corner, facing the hatch. The old hunting knife from the survival drawer clutched so tight my knuckles ached. The lantern dimmed around 3 a.m., and the silence became unbearable. Not peaceful, not restful. It was the kind of silence you get right before something decides to come in. And that's when I saw it, on the far wall, scratched into the wood. I swear it hadn't been there earlier. 6 small words, do not answer from above. No initials, no explanation, but the gouges were deep, like someone had carved them in a hurry or with desperation. I stayed still for the rest of the night, but the knocks didn't come back, not until the sun started rising. And this time they weren't from the floor. They were from the walls, soft, like fingertips dragging. And then I heard footsteps, not climbing the ladder, walking around the tower, 30 feet up, as if someone was pacing the outside just behind the thin metal walls. I couldn't explain it. There's no platform out there, just open air. But the steps circled me, once, twice, then stopped behind the north window. I crawled forward on my hands and knees and peeked out, and saw nothing. Just fog, not mist, fog, the kind that didn't blow in from the trees, but rolled up from the ground like smoke, thick, yellow-gray, unmoving, and then it cleared just enough to show me a face, pressed against the glass from the outside. It was mine. It didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared face against the glass, like it was wearing me or trying to remember how to. The features were all there, nose, lips, hairline. But something was off, slightly stretched, like whatever was standing out there had learned what I looked like from memory. A memory that was fading. I didn't move, didn't scream. I couldn't. My voice felt stolen, my body hollow, and then it smiled. Not wide, just enough. And I saw its teeth were mine, but not clean, not human. Crooked like roots, pale like something that had never seen sunlight. It tapped the glass once with a single finger, a dull, wet tap, then turned and walked away. I watched it step into the air. No platform, no rope, no ladder. It just walked into the fog and disappeared. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't grip the knife anymore. The tower was completely still again, except the trapdoor was open. Just a crack. Just wide enough. I hadn't heard it unbolt. I hadn't seen it move. But there it was, and from the dark opening came the sound I'd feared most. My voice, calling up from the depths, crying, "Please let me out. Please, it's cold down here." It didn't sound fake. It sounded like me, younger, desperate, like a child, locked in a crawl space. The way I had when I was 7 and got trapped under the old porch back home. But nobody else knew that story. Nobody should. Then I remembered something else. My mother used to tell me about the old echo that lived in the woods. It don't repeat sound, she said. It repeats your fear. I didn't move for what felt like an hour. The hatch stayed cracked. That dark sliver of open space, just wide enough to imagine something watching. Something crouched there in the black, curled up in the tower's belly like a forgotten thought that had finally started whispering again. "Let me out. Let me out. Let me out." My voice, but wrong. Too exact. Too practiced. No stutter. No panic. Just repetition. Like it was waiting for me to believe it. I didn't go near it, but I made a mistake. I spoke just one word, barely more than a whisper. "Hello." Everything stopped. The echo ended mid-sentence, like a skipped record. The wind died outside. The air in the tower turned heavy, pressing against my ribs, like gravity had thickened. Then a slow creak. The hatch opened, wide, and the smell hit me. Damp rot, iron, old wood, and something older beneath it, something that doesn't belong above the soil. A shape moved in the dark. It didn't crawl out. It rose, first a hand, my hand, then the top of a head. Hairline identical to mine, then the eyes, my eyes, but dull, sunken, like they'd stared too long into nothing and learned to like it. It looked at me the way predators do when they're mimicking a cry for help. And then it said the thing that broke whatever was left of my mind. "You shouldn't have spoken. Now we can switch." I ran. I don't remember unlocking the hatch or climbing down the ladder. I just remember falling maybe 20 feet, maybe more, hitting the frozen ground hard enough to knock the breath out of me. I didn't stop. I ran barefoot through black trees and blind fog branches, clawing at my face, something laughing just behind me in my voice. Not a scream, a mockery, like it was wearing my fear as a mask. The woods bent the wrong way. No landmarks, no trail, no compass, just that feeling like every step took me deeper into a place that remembered things I'd never told anyone. At some point, I stopped, collapsed beside a stone outcrop slick with frost and moss. I couldn't hear the thing anymore, but I could hear her. My mother's voice again, closer, softer, not begging, singing. A lullaby she used to hum when I was too sick to sleep. The one she only sang once my father was gone. The one she said kept old voices away. "Come lay your bones where the mountain forgets, where the fog can't name you, where silence regrets." I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up in town, on a park bench, shivering barefoot, throat raw. And I remembered what it said. "Now we can switch." I ran home. But my home wasn't mine anymore. The lights were on, the door unlocked. Inside was someone with my face, my voice, my memories, wearing me perfectly. He looked up from the kitchen table, smiled. "Rough shift?" he asked. And in that moment, I realized I had stayed in the tower too long, and something else had walked out. Some stories never truly end, they just wait, quietly, for someone curious enough to listen. Deep in the Appalachian fog, where memories can speak in your mother's voice, where mirrors don't always reflect what's real, and where the name you answer to might be your last. We've only scratched the surface, and if you ever hear your own voice calling from the dark, remember silence might save you. Still with us if you made it through all 3 stories tonight. Hit subscribe and step deeper into the vault. The True Ghost Vault holds forgotten things, but every time you listen, a piece of you stays behind. We'll see you in the next story. If you're still you.